Welcome back to the Exploring Growth podcast. If you've been following this last series, you know that I'm building a course called How to Build a Strategic Marketing Plan. And over the last 4 episodes, I have touched on each module that's the first part of this course that we're building out. And so, what I wanted to do now is sort of hit pause and use this episode as a recap for anybody that hasn't seen those previous episodes so they can quickly get caught up before we move into the next probably 4 to 5 final episodes. So, let's recap. The first thing that we talked about in this plan was to understand your buyer, right? This is a really important thing, possibly the most important thing. And for the first episode, I had Tim Parkin, a global marketing consultant and coach, on. He's a colleague of mine. And I've had him on before. Actually, it was our first episode of the entire podcast, which was kind of cool. And we talked about understanding your buyer. And what was cool about what I liked and the clip I pulled that I want to show you is Tim really came at it from the psychological or emotional state. Not just knowing the demographics and all the surface level information about your buyer, but more so knowing how do they buy emotionally? What is it? What are the needs and desires and pains that we're really getting to? How does it move them emotionally? And then backing that up with logic. I thought that was such a really good insight. So this first clip is Tim talking about understanding your buyer, putting yourself in the buyer's shoes about what's happening in their role. What it's gonna show you the needs. It's gonna show you the pain points. It's gonna show you the inroads. It's going to show you how to speak to them, how not to speak to them, timing. So I love
Yes.
this idea of triggers and thinking about those first because it opens up so many other possibilities.
Yeah, and then let me expand upon that if I may, because I
Mhm.
think the other thing is people buy and act based on emotion and then they justify with logic. And this is really important to understand when you think about your buyer, that often we think about our features and benefits of our product or service, what it can do, our case studies, our results, all that stuff. And none of that actually matters first. What matters first is the emotional investment and the belief that the buyer has. And so if you think about your buyer, you want to figure out what are their aspirations? What are the things in the future that they really want to become and to have? Not necessarily the features and benefits now. And also, what are the fears that whatever
Mhm.
pain they're experiencing, whatever problem they have, if that gets worse and in 6 months, in a year, in 10 years, what is a fear that they desperately want to avoid? You can think of it kind of like heaven and hell if you want to. What's the heaven they
Yeah.
want to achieve? What's the hell they want to get away from? And if you frame it like that, and start there, then you can uncover the emotions, and
Mhm.
emotions drive everything. And so I would start from an emotional perspective and then figure out how to address those emotions with the logical side, which is the features, the benefits, the case studies, the results, all that good stuff, the reviews you have, all of that. But start with the emotions and understanding your customers, your buyers at an emotional level.
Okay, that was great. I always love talking to Tim. He's got such great insights. And you should look him up on LinkedIn, Tim Parkin Consulting, if you want to follow more of his insights there. So this next episode, this the second episode of the 4 that we've done so far. I had the chance to sit down with Dan Sanchez. Definitely follow him on LinkedIn. He is a beast on LinkedIn. I'm very engaged and very intentional as he's working on building audiences. A lot of really good expert insights there on demand gen and audience growth. And in the second episode, we talked about audience kind of more plural. So if we start with the buyer, understanding your buyer is a really good thing to do, but also understanding the stakeholders and how they have influence to your buyers. So we talk specifically in this clip about how to understand the stakeholders through how you can add value to them through the pipeline, marketing funnel and sales pipeline. So this is a really good clip. This is where marketing gets fun for me. I think you're doing good to sell something to someone. That's great. And it's the VP of whatever. But what about the rest of it? What about the rest of the people that need to be addressed that are influential to your buyer? And how personalized can you make your message to them that then adds value across the organization? I feel like that's the big beginning of retention because you're going on the front end and saying, hey, we just want to love on you and be friends with you and have you have you trust us? And you may not even bought anything from us at this point, but if that's what their vibe they're getting in the messaging, and it's also valuable whenever they do sign on, now retention and success is going to be so much higher.
Yep. I definitely think about it. If it's a big product, again, in the tens of thousands at least, then you have to think about it in the whole funnel. Okay, like identify their three most influential stakeholders and just start with the three. You can build out web pages personalized for them that address their concerns, their things that they ask, and showcase how the product best helps them.
Yes.
Right. So you could do that. And then you think about like, that's pretty bottom of the funnel, but then even go farther down, you create sales enablement to arm the salespeople who are getting on calls with these people, so that they can more effectively address those stakeholders. And then you got to think about customer service when you're first kicking off this relationship. How do you include those relationships in the onboarding for the product, so that everybody's successful, not just the stakeholder that made the decision, that's the main person, but the other peripheral people that have
That's
to
right.
also see this implementation through. How do you onboard them correctly? So you can kind of see it all the way through there. Now, if it's a small product, like you probably just need have some support docs that are addressed there for if they need help, but like a buffer, like a social media tool that just doesn't cost a lot of money a month, like it's kind of overkill for them. It's not a big enough purchase to be of concern to those stakeholders usually.
And again, if you haven't gone and found Dan Sanchez on LinkedIn, please do that. There's so much really good content he puts out every single day. So in the third episode, to recap it, I had the chance to sit down with Brooke Sevchek, growth marketer, demand gen marketer, really good at branding. And it was great because we had this conversation about vision. It's one thing to understand your buyer, but it's another to understand yourself or your company's identity. What is the vision that you have that you want to have an impact on the world or in your industry? We had an amazing conversation about vision and how if you aren't playing towards strongly held beliefs, then you're always going to run into challenges. So enjoy this clip.
Vision seems like something that comes out of like a business textbook that you would see in, getting some kind of business degree. But it doesn't seem like something that translates into the real world, but they would need to be told that could not be further from the truth. When we've worked with people who are struggling to build an audience in general, are struggling to make their message resonate, the first thing we do is figure out, what do you actually believe? And what are those strongly held beliefs? What do you believe with some strength of conviction? And almost always, like if I'm acting like a doctor, my diagnosis is, well, you're not creating anything compelling and you're not growing an audience because you don't care about anything and you think you shouldn't care about anything because you're a brand. Well, that doesn't make any sense. And so the first step always to get a message to resonate is to go back to, what's your vision? That's step one. And then based on that, what are your strongly held beliefs? And then based on those, how can we develop some type of IP that we can defend, care about? And when you have those three things, then you can start to build an audience, and you can start to do something real with your marketing. But if you're a marketer and you're working under a leader who doesn't have a vision, then you have to go back and answer those questions for yourself, do a lot of hard work, do the research. I would say go talk to every major leader in the organization and just try to dig into why they're doing what they're doing, where they see the product going, where they see the company going. Go talk to your customers and figure out why they're excited to work with you, why they chose to work with you. Go talk to people who are in your pipeline or in your market and ask them those same questions. What are they looking for? What problems are they experiencing? And based off of that, come up with some kind of de facto mission and vision that you can own and then build beliefs and IP off of.
I really enjoyed that conversation with Brooks. I always like talking to him. But we're thinking about vision. It's one thing to have a vision, but it's another to be able to practically take that to the front lines with your team and execute on a plan of how to bring your vision to fruition. So then we get to this idea of talking about how your mission, the practical nature of a vision, aligns with your vision. And in this fourth and final clip to kind of round us out in this recap, we have had the opportunity to sit down with Manny De La Vega, who's a seasoned entrepreneur, such a great advisor, coach, mentor. I've seen him do wonderful things with entrepreneurs. And we had a great discussion about aligning your mission with your vision. So enjoy this clip.
Your mission is not aligned with your vision, then there's a disconnect. And then the statements get lost in just a piece of paper that nobody ever looks and all that. And that happens a lot in businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I found that the main reason why those get misaligned is because the entrepreneur doesn't spend enough time not only writing the mission statement, but getting to know themselves to see if they're aligned with that mission. Because if what is about actions, your actions ultimately are going to be determined by your values and what you believe and what you do. That's what you're going to end up doing anyway every day, whether you want it or not, because it comes with you, with what you believe, what you think. And if you don't spend enough time seeing what you are about, then you're not going to be able to make a connection between your mission and yourself to carry out the vision. Does that make sense?
It does.
So one of the, always we help entrepreneurs answer these two main questions. One is, what are you really passionate about? Because sometimes they want to carry out the vision, but they don't really know what their passion is exactly. I mean, in a construction company, you can take that in many different areas. You can take it to commercial, residential, and what is really your passion? Do you want to help the small, residential customers? Do you want to help the big companies, commercial? What is really your passion? And then the next one is, what are you really good? What can you be the best in the world at? And once you get a little perspective on that, then you can align your mission.
Okay, now you're caught up. That's the first 4 modules of the course that we're building. And we have probably 4 to 6 that are coming down the pipe. So this was a good little intermission. I appreciate you following this series, whether you just watched the recap or you've watched all the previous 4 episodes. I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a framework to think about how we're building. If we do the who, what, when, where, why, and how, the who is your buyer. The why is your vision. The what is going to be your mission. And now we're going to move into the how in the next couple episodes, where we talk about the buyer's journey, how to build effective campaigns in a core narrative story. So we have a lot of good content coming down the pipe, and we have a lot of really cool guests. I'm really excited about our next one. That's very central to buyer's journey creation. So stick with us. And if you haven't signed up for the email newsletter, please go to harvardmurray.com, click on Exploring Growth, enter your email, and you'll be able to get even more insights than what we have on here. Thanks a lot.